Welcome, everybody. This is the Highlight Podcast. I'm here today with Mr. Charlie Maddox and Dexter Fisher, commissioner here in Athens, Georgia. Today, we're bringing this conversation to you mostly to discuss local politics, things that's going on in Athens, and what you might need to be on the lookout for as the government is improving their budget this year or approving their budget in the near future. So, Charlie, we'll kind of let you do a little introduction and let you kind of welcome in Dexter.
Hey, this is Charlie Maddox, and you heard my new program, It Is What It Is. And today I'm just delighted to host Dexter Fisher, a longtime friend of mine, and I know Dexter in and out, but I want you to get to know who Dexter Fisher is. Too many times we'll listen to people on the radio, looking at them and me, but today we want to go an in-depth way to find out who is Dexter Fisher. Dexter, describe yourself.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it, Ron. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it. Well, who is Dexter Fisher? And I would say Dexter Fisher is born and raised in Greenwood, South Carolina. I always call myself a civil rights baby. Grew up in the highlights in the 60s during the civil rights movement and had a great childhood. Was raised by a single mom, but what really made me was the village that surrounded me. Grew up with a group of people in my community that molded me, that helped me. I ended up getting an athletic scholarship to go out to college at Mars Hill University, where I played football for 4 years there. I had a great childhood. You know, we had not started integration yet. We started integration when I was in the 7th grade. So we integrated. I got bused, as most black communities did. I got bused 7, 8 miles away from where I grew up when the school was right up the street from me.
Right.
And
So you have to travel an hour plus to go to school?
Go to school, yeah. Pretty well, I wouldn't say an hour, at least 45 minutes though.
Yeah.
To get to
there and back. There and back, you double that then.
Yeah, exactly. To get there and because of integration. Now, our integration was tough in Greenwood because what they did, they just stuck us together and didn't have no plan. Right. And unfortunately, when we integrated that first year, we had shut down about 2 or 3 months ago. We had race riots within our community. And how I started getting involved in politics, my mom got picked. That was a biracial group of parents that got together and said, hey, okay, what we need to do to make this transition smooth when these kids go back to school. So she was a part of that group. And for me, as I watched her, like I said, doing the civil rights, where she would go knock on doors, make sure people got registered to vote. And that was important. So I saw her action, saw my community action. So I knew eventually, somewhere down the road, I was going to probably run for politics. Now, I spent, then I went to college, graduated, moved back to Greenwood for a little while, and coached at my high school. I thought I was going to go into coaching and the teaching, but I didn't like it. One of my mentors who worked in the textile industry asked me that I wanted to join the management training program in the textile industry. Did that for several years. Made good money, but I figured out early on I could not be inside the building for 8 to 10 years. 8 to 10 hours.
Right.
That was just not my life. So I started applying for graduate schools. Of course, I applied to University of South Carolina, University of North Carolina, when I had gone to school in North Carolina, of course, Georgia. Came over here and visited back in 1987. Liked the community, like it. So, hey, bam, load up the car. Moved to Athens, Georgia, and I've been here ever since. It's 1988.
I want to go back into your childhood a little bit because you said you grew up in Greenwood.
Yeah, South Carolina.
What is that community? I feel like Greenwood is kind of known for its business, the black business community that was at I think there's a bank now named Greenwood.
But that was in Oklahoma.
Oh, it was in Oklahoma.
So not South Carolina. Okay. Yeah, and I know where you was going.
Hey, I had it mixed up. I was trying to see.
Yeah, but I know,
curiosity.
Yeah, but again, like in a community, small community, but again, I had a great village. I was the only kid in my and I grew up in a house. Only kid in my neighborhood though didn't have a father, but those men in my neighborhood though they showed me love, they showed me work ethic, and they attended my ball games, so they they molded me, they mentored me, and it sort of made me the man I am today. I mean, there were so many men that touched my life. And then as you go into sports, you got all these coaches. And my godfather, Floyd Nicholson, who's my mentor and my godfather, he was a football coach at one time. He would always take us home, African American. May have went to South Carolina State University. Would all take all us home drop us off. All the players drop us off at our house. But then after he got out of education, he ran for mayor, first black mayor in Greenwood, in my hometown. Never had a black mayor before. He served 5 terms as the mayor. Then he ran for state senate, and won state senate. Served 3 terms as a state senator. Now he ran. Get this, he was a Democrat, ran a Republican district, and won 4 times.
Wow.
As a Democrat, but he I sort of patterned myself after him when it comes to my politics.
True. Charlie, you?
Well, again, that I remember you coming here over 30 years ago at UGA, and that football career it never showed up. We didn't give you that credit, but like many of us that grew up in that era, it was the village that made the difference. Exactly. Even though in tough economic times and racial tension, there were people that reached out and helped us to get where we are today. And somehow that is missing. That is missing.
And I think there's one thing that happens in our community now. First of all, we don't know our neighbors, and that's unfortunate. And what I like about where I'm living now, we just had 3 people to move in, and my wife and I, we knocked on the doors and told them who we are and everything. And so we're trying to get to know our neighborhood, but we don't do enough of that. Sometimes, when we were growing up, and Charlie can tell you, you can be somewhere across town and get disciplined by an adult. They'll call your parents and say, I disciplined your child. It was okay. Right. But you can't do that now. My parents get upset if you discipline your children. So we need to go back. How do we connect with our community and let people know we need to help each other in order to make sure our young people are able to succeed and be successful in whatever endeavor they decide to do moving forward.
And that's one of the things that we need to get back to. And that's one of the things I saw when you came to Athens. You were not an Athenian. I was one of those, been here forever. But you jumped right in and you joined organizations and did things that promoted this. And that's what stuck out to me, even when I didn't really know Dexter Fisher. But I saw what you were doing, and we kind of moved in the same circles. And oftentimes it's people outside of our community that comes in, but we need to raise up these folks inside the community and get to doing the positive things.
And you know what, Charlie, you're so right about that. And for me, this is my home, though. This is where I'm gonna die at. I love this community. Although I grew up in South Carolina, all 3 of my kids were educated in the Clarke County school system. They done very well for themselves, went to college, got jobs now, and this is the community that I want to be a part of. The people here have shown me love, and I hope I've shown some love back. I think the 32 years that I spent at UGA, and like Charlie said, I spent my time getting involved, being a part, sitting on boards. That's how I really started getting involved. And I sit on those boards, like I was on the Council on Aging board. I was on Piedmont Hospital board. I was on the Mentor board. So you sit on these boards, not only do you get to learn the community, but you need to learn the people that you're working with on those boards. So I really appreciate that. Really got a chance to know our community. I went through Lead Athens. And to me, Lead Athens really opened my eyes. I tell people, until you do Lead Athens, you really don't know what your community is. Yeah. We did things within Lead Athens that I didn't know existed. Right. Over our east side. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on our east side until I got involved in Lead Athens. And so, what that community was doing over there and what those people over there wanted for their community and wanted for their kids. So I glad I had the opportunity to see that and say, hey, there's another side of Athens. Right. And unfortunately, we sort of got 2 Athens.
Yeah.
We got one that's affluent and one that's not affluent. But for me, though, I want to be able to bring everybody to the table. And I think that's important that we do that and everybody have a voice, not only our government, but how this, what's the future of our community going to look like.
Right. I'm curious. What do you think? I mean, if you were to give your opinion, what do you think the direction that we're heading? Because a lot of young people want to leave Athens. Right. They feel like there is no opportunity here. Some people actually feel like some of the older people hold opportunity from them and actually keep them, out of the loop. So it's like, how do you kind of bridge that gap?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think first of all, we need to bring young people along, like yourself. We need to teach them like I was taught. I need to be able to put my influence on you, my experience of working, my experience of connections, of how you interact with one another, how you meet certain people in certain places that can help you get from point A to point B. And we need to share that information. We should not hold that information from our young people. There needs to be a new generation. You know, I'm 65 years old. There need to be somebody coming behind me, ready to take the mantle and run with. Now, I say this about, about young people wanting to move. There are great opportunities here. You know, we can read the Miser Corporation, which is a biotech company. They're going to bring in 1,700 jobs in this community. High-paying jobs, high-waging jobs. We need to make sure that our young people in the community have an opportunity to get some of those jobs. And that's how you go from poverty to middle class, to move up, because we want them to have those opportunities, but we got to get those opportunities to them. School system right now, they have a biotech pathway. We need to make sure as many of our kids as possible that look like us get involved in those things. Then you go out to Athens Tech, get that training, and then let that company hire you. You know, you're talking about $65,000, $70,000 starting salary. Those are good salaries. So we need to make sure that, first of all, we need to communicate that and make sure that our young people are aware of that.
Right. You know, I was talking with Rick last week, and we discussed of how there are opportunities here, but we do have to kind of see on the other side of it is that how are we getting the kids to be excited about these opportunities? Looking at the graduation rate, he said when he was working in the school district, I know you used to work with the school district as well, there were Latino students that were graduating at a higher rate that weren't even born here than native Athenians. So it speaks to a deeper issue of what's going on in our communities and how we as Black people, feel about our education. And so I just want you to speak a little bit about that, because you've spent some.
Well, let me throw a little bit in there, because I went through a lot of that. I've been here 78 years, and I've seen the school system grow, and I see what the problem has been, the connection, where individuals out there don't connect with what's going to high school. You've got to be able to connect that to somebody or to a job. When Dexter and I went to school, that connected to a job. We went to school. It's like, why are you going? Because I want a good job. But nowadays, it does not connect. It does not meet. So we've got to meet the kids closer to that. We worked in programs where when they get to high school, most of the time that's gone. But when we can get to them early about biotech or just showing up at a job on a regular basis. There are job opportunities in this town for people that, don't have college degrees and all of that. But we've got to show them those doors open, because believe me, the opposite crowd, they're just telling them they ain't gonna pay you no attention. You ain't gonna get in. You're not gonna do that. So those that are there at the door, we've got to hold the door. But not only hold the door, we got to usher them in, and we have to reach out to them.
Teach them how to walk.
And let them know.
Yeah, so there are a lot of great opportunities. Talking with the people at the chamber, we got 14,000 jobs within this geographical area.
Mm-hmm.
High-paying jobs. Some of these plants out here are paying $22 to $25 an hour.
Right. So
the thing we got to do, that's why I'm so glad. And I think it's a hidden gem with our school system is that career academy. There are so many great pathways.
Yeah.
But we need to involve our kids. Now, let me say this about our parents. A lot of our parents are working 2 or 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, and I applaud them. So what we got to do for those parents, we got to help those parents with those kids. That's why mentoring is so important. We got to make sure that we touch base with those particular kids and help them, because their parents trying to make way for them. And I appreciate that. Now, we got other situations where we got, like Mr. Maddox talked about, like Charlie talked about, we got to make sure once the kids get a job, they understand the work ethic. What it means showing up, what it means being on time. Because what employers have told me, we can train them. But we got to get those soft skills, them understanding. If you got a doctor's appointment and it was 2 weeks off, don't come that morning and say, I got a doctor's appointment. Understand, go ahead and put your time in and say, hey, 2 weeks, I got a doctor's appointment and it's okay with me to be off. Or if you sick that morning, call in and say you sick. Don't wait 4 or 5 days down the road and call in. I had that same issue. I had 500 employees that worked me at UGA. And a lot of times when people came to me, when we had to terminate employees, and that was the worst part of my job, because I know people needed that job. But when I look at that paperwork in front of me, the first question I ask is anything that's written in this file untrue? If they tell me no, then sometimes I don't leave them. And a lot of it is because they won't come to work.
Right.
I need you here. I said, I always do our orientation. I want to let our HR department do it. Mm-hmm. I feel they need to hear from me. The only thing I told her, I said, if you come to work and do your job, you ain't gonna have no problem working here at UGA. Those are only my 2 rules. If you do that, you had no problem. But unfortunately, sometimes that didn't happen, and so you have to make hard decisions. And that was never easy for me.
I say for years I worked with the Department of Labor. I saw the problems. I still see them. We train individuals, some of the smartest individuals we have in our schools, but we don't train them on the soft skills, on just being, honest, just being respectful, just being, diligent. And that's where a lot of our kids get ground up with the rest of the mess that's going on. And we have to be able to identify them, reach out to them, and give every one of them an opportunity. You'd be amazed at some of the minds that we see on the streets with some of these so-called gangs or with these folks that are just hanging out. They're just brilliant minds, but they're not trained. They don't understand the world. And again, they don't look at the future because everybody's talking what? Grim and doom. Well, the future's coming. You just better be ready for it. Right. And we can help you get ready for it. But if you just allow it to come, it's going to gobble you up like it's done so many other people.
Let me ask you, Dexter, you spent, what was it? How long have you been in the mayor and commission so far?
I'm on my third year, my third year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 3 years in, what do you see? And now that you're, familiar in some ways, what do you want to do as a commissioner?
So I think some of the things I'll say, our processes need to be better. And when I say that, there's a lot of things that we can do. I'm a facilities guy. So to me, processing and data, I'm data driven.
Operations.
So, operation, yeah. So when I see some of our processes that we got in place, we have to improve on that. Now, I never want to throw our staff under the bus, but those processes can be helped by the commissioners. For example, I use our SPLOSH projects. We ask our citizens to vote for facilities projects, SPLOSH projects, infrastructure project, T-SPLOSH project. Now, those things, when those come up to vote and they say, yeah, we want this, we should have to take 5, 6, 7, 8 years for those projects to get completed. We got a SPLOSH project still in 2011. Mm-hmm. 2011, it's 2025. And those things should not happen. So we need to improve on a process like that. When I worked for the school system, for CCSD, the SPLOSH department reported to us, within the 3 years I was there, we got 2 high schools built.
Which high school? Cedar and...
Well, I say built. We got...
Rebuilt.
We had Hillsman get built, and then we built Clarke Miller, because I was leaving out with Clarke Miller. But you know how we built those so fast?
How?
We floated bonds. We knew that the school was going to cost $30 million to build. We went on and floated that bond for $35 million. And then after we collected the taxes, we paid that back. Now, what we do in Clarke County is, okay, say we got a project. I give you the judicial system. When we priced that thing out 4 or 5 years ago, that was a $30 million project. It's $60 million now. We'll probably never collect that money to get that center built. What we should have done is went on and got that money, built that judicial center, in other words, a new courthouse. We could have had that built. But right now, first of all, we ain't got no land. We don't know where we're going to put it.
Landlocked.
And we still don't have a judicial center that our citizens voted on. So for me, process is very important. So that's one of the things that I've seen that we can do better on. I think also with our human community development, we do better for us when we get ready to fund nonprofits, how we get resources out of them. We should get those, if we have vetted and got all the information from these nonprofits to get money in their hands, 30 to 60 days, they should be getting those funds. Sometimes it takes 3, 6, sometimes 9 months. So to me, that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I guess, before you were on the mayor commission, we did a SPLOSH program for the jail. And they did it just like you said. Because that judge said, you will build this jail.
Right.
And they floated the bonds and built the jail well before they got. And for some reason now, as you're saying, they sit around and let's see if we get the money. And of course, prices are going up. Too many times when I'm watching things, there are not many business minds that are working there. You know,
Mhm.
I don't have anything against politicians, but as you say, you got to have some people on that to understand that there is a process and not willy-nilly.
Yep.
And when the commission set the process, I'm absolutely sure that the staff carries it out.
Carry it out.
Because I've talked to many staff, they're just frustrated, like, you know, it's hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. And I said, what are you waiting on? We're waiting on the commission to do this. We're on a project now for this medical mobile van. Okay? Speed line's 2020.
Yep. It's supposed to be getting voted on tomorrow.
Yeah. But this 2020, and the people that we presented to, it's been nitpicking. The staff is ready to go. They've been ready to go. So we got to hold the people, you know, and again, we've got to hold the elected officials accountable. But we got to know what's going on. Yeah. See, I can't hold anybody, you know, accountable if I don't know what's going on. But if I know this federal courthouse is supposed to be built with this money, and that if you don't get this now, you're going to get it out here. When it comes up, we can ask the question, why aren't you floating the bond for this?
So those are some of the things that I like to see corrected, and we can correct those things. We just have to work with our staff and work with my colleagues to make sure we get those things done.
And just make it simpler. You know, sometimes I notice some of the commissioners leave there with like, I don't know what just happened. You know, we didn't. But again, they have to make it where Charlie and Ron and Joe out there, they understand what this process ought to be. And too many times they don't want us to know, because then we hold them accountable. But that's what it's all about. If you want to be in politics, you ought to want to be held accountable.
And transparency, to me, is real important. I think our community need to know what we're doing, how we're spending their tax dollars. Right. I think that's important. You know, for me, I always try to look at first of all, how it's going to impact our community, and it's the best thing that we're doing. So I'm always going to take a look at it. And then transparency is important. We need to let the community know what Charlie mentioned. What are we doing? What impact is making? And it's going to better our community.
Right.
So those things I look at.
In years gone by, well, we had 3-4 newspapers, and people would keep up with what was going on, and this is when this ought to be done. But now it's just up and down. Nobody knows what, unless you put your nose to the grindstone and stick there and see what they're saying. And sometimes I always say they're speaking in tongues, because they don't know it. They just say things.
Right.
But we've got that's the one thing that I see, you know, has to happen, and for the government, is that the people to really get involved, but not get involved when something goes wrong. Get involved when stuff is going right, and be a helper in getting that out there. Be that instead of just an instigator. Well, this didn't work. Well, what did you do about it? Did you come and give it input? Did you come and ask the question? And that's what it is. And you and I have said that this is the desert of news in Athens-Clarke County.
Yeah, well, you know, print journalism has pretty much gone away. Mm-hmm. Most people get their information on the internet, unfortunately. Right. And you don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
You get that information. So I think for us, and one other thing I would do, you know, and again, I know we're going to get into this later on. If I'm the mayor, to me, I think we need to get information out to our community. I don't think we do enough of that. I mean, it's on our website, and I get that. Right. But maybe I may do a Dexter Fisher podcast.
Right.
You know, if I'm fortunate enough to be the mayor, and so the community can hear what we're doing.
Have a weekly.
So just do a weekly thing, and they can call in. Right. So hey, we got this going on. Because one thing that we need to be, again, hold ourselves accountable. That's why in District 5, any developer want to do anything in District 5, they always know they got to reach out to me first. Then depending on where they're doing that development at, then I'm going to reach out to that community, see whether or not they want that.
Right.
So I keep my constituents informed what's happening. I'll give you a perfect example. The Homewood Hill Shopping Center.
Yep.
They want to redo that whole shopping center.
Yeah.
The community want it. However, I told the developer, I said, we got to have a town hall and let them folks know, first of all, what you're doing there, what it's going to look like, and how it's going to impact Homewood Hill subdivision. So we're having these talks now.
Right.
I did a town hall. We had over 100 people there. So they want to know what's going on with that shopping center. And it's great pickings for that shopping center. We can really make that shopping center be viable again. We're talking about restaurants there. They ain't talking about some living space there. They ain't talking about trying to put a grocery store there. I can remember when I first moved there, there was a grocery store down in Homewood Hills Shopping Center. So those type of things that community would want in their community. So yeah.
And I just speak from the community at large. Lack of information. That's what causes a lot of the mistrust and a lot of the, distrust, because they don't really know what's going on until they get down in front of the commission or get somewhere and, oh, that's what that is. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, so we need to do a better job of getting that information out.
I want to talk about housing first to start off. What do you feel like the landscape of housing is, and especially like affordable single family housing? What's that situation like for?
So I think the housing question is a big question, not only from the state perspective, but around the country. The cost of housing is expensive. For young people, young professionals. I talked to a young married couple. Both of them got good jobs. But when you look at the average single-family home in Clarke County, it's $350,000 for a single-family home, in these neighborhoods. So I think for me, what I look at is, first of all, we need to have a plan in our community. What type of houses do we want to build? Okay, we talk about low income. We talk about workforce. We talk about professional for young professionals. Then we talk about high end. So you got the spectrum. We can do all that, but then we need to figure out what's our most pressing need when it comes to housing. Is it for our workforce? Is it for our low income? Is it for our working? We don't know that. So again, I'm gonna ask the staff, and I have asked the staff. Y'all need to tell me, what do we think we need the most in this community? When I talk to the people at the housing authority, and they got a waiting list that's a mile long, then that tells me we need low income, and not only low income, but we need affordable housing. We need to get those, because like I mentioned earlier, we got parents. Some parents working 2 or 3 jobs, and because their income most of the income may be spent on housing costs because of how much rent is. Now, what's driving that is our student population, and I'm gonna tell you, I love our students here at UGA. When they come, they provide economic impact for us. That's good, but we gotta have a balance, and the developers need to understand that. Because you want to build student house, but we also need to build some workforce house. So I think there needs to be a partnership, what I call public-private partnership, between the government and private builders, and say, hey, how can we work together to build affordable housing, and you still can make a profit?
Right.
So we need to have those conversations.
Is that something that's like a committee, or does the government expand a new position to deal with that? Or
I think we as elected officials need to be pushing that agenda. Now, one of my colleagues, Commissioner Thornton, that's sort of her baby. So she's sort of pushing that agenda about public and private partnership. And I think, but we just never have a sit down at the table with developers to talk about things like that. And that's part of the problem, Ron. And that's one thing I'm going to be right. And I mentioned this earlier about partnerships. If you want to have something successful, you got to bring in different partners. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. You got to look at some new ideas, a little bit thinking outside the box. How can we do these things, work with developers and work with private and public partners?
Right. And it seems like they're coming, because I was watching the last Mayor and Commission video, and I saw one of my clients with W&A Engineering, Mr. Williamson. He came up there, and so it's like, maybe, y'all push to have lunch one day and see what,
Well, I think what they're doing, one of the things, you might have saw my comments, is we try to build student house. Should we as a government be in the student housing business? And I don't think we should be. We should be in the people business.
Right.
My first priority is to the citizens of Athens, to our employees. Now, and the third is to our visitors and people who come and spend time here on a part-time basis. We want to make sure when parents send their kids to UGA, same thing when we went out to school. First, we want to make sure they're safe. We want to make sure that, things are provided for them, and that's great. And again, UGA is the economic engine that drives everything.
Right.
And whether or not we want to believe it or not, it is.
Right.
And those partnerships we should work on those partnerships and really work together for the betterment of this community. But for us, as an elected official, my obligation is to the people who elected me. And I need to make sure that we have some type of housing for those individuals, and we can't let developers come in and keep doing student house, and our rent keep escalating. We somewhere along the line we got to come to a common ground. And the project down with the foundry was going on. we're going to get some good benefits out of that. They're talking about doing sewer, talking about giving us $8 million. But again, it's with transparency of that. How did that look, and how did we come to the table? And then you ask us to vote on that tomorrow night?
Right.
It doesn't make, it's too much, too fast, and we did not have enough public input.
That often seems to be the issue. Too fast and not enough public input.
Yeah.
What were you about to say, Charlie?
I've been in housing 30 years, and I've seen how it has changed, multifamily housing, single-family housing. With the Athens Housing Authority, we've done it all. And what we need to get is people that understand how that's done. When we talk about affordable housing, according to the federal government, affordable housing is when you spend no more than 30% of your income. When it gets over that, that's unaffordable housing. So what we need to do is work with other entities. We sat down with builders and construction doing Athens housing, and we come to, okay, this is how we got to do this. This is what we can do. This is what what can the city pitch in and make it cost less for the developer? What incentives? We got some incentives there, but you have to give them incentives. I'm on the state board of the Department of Community Affairs. We build houses all over the state. We built some houses down in Bullock County. We put 74 houses on 75 acres of 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1,100 square feet of housing. And that's it. Okay, here in Athens, you probably heard this, and Dexter and I were kind of your first house. See, that's something called your first house. That just gets you in there, get you out the apartment thing, and then you move up. But what happens, somebody else above you moves up, and it becomes a continuous thing. But we don't have that now, where you get your first house, and it's reasonable, and then you build equity, and then you move up. That's what we've got to have, some first houses for people to come in, not where they're going to stay from now on. And we're missing that. We're building, and do not blame the builders. They're in a business. And unless you accommodate them, unless you approach them, they're going to continue doing what they're in the business for. But there are plenty of good construction companies around here that's willing to sit down and talk. I'm not saying all of them will come to the board, but they want to know. Right. What do you want? They live here.
They do. And I think Habitat does a good job. They do a great job of getting people in the housing. They got Michael's Creek. Talking about 62 houses going to get built there. Families going to be able to move into those homes. So those things like that, some of those things, so I don't want to see all gloom and doom. There's some good things going on with housing. Again, Housing Authority, with Belto, we got the first phase done. Then we're talking about doing 2, 3, and 4 in the future, and then what Habitat's doing. But again, I still say we need to plan. Okay, so what does that look like as we move forward? And if we get monies in to do housing, first of all, I got to find the land to do it. And people need to realize now we're the smallest geographical area in the state of Georgia. So we ain't got a whole lot of land. So whatever land that is that we can build on, we need to make sure we can do that, work with the people who want to work with us, and make sure we can get people in those homes.
Right. You got the budget getting ready to come up for voting. Is there, I kind of want you to walk down, I guess, like the big rocks of the budget in your mind of what you see and how you feel like what's the results going to be? Just kind of give us your review.
We had 2 commissions put 2 different budgets together. And let me tell y'all how the budget process works. So the mayor does the budget first. He does his budget. Then he give us the budget. With me being the mayor pro tem now, I've been sort of shepherding the budget along with my colleagues. So we looked at the budget that he presented to us. Then we look at the budget. So there were some things that was funded, that wanted to fund, he did not fund. For example, the sheriff's department, we wanted to bring equity with his starting salaries for his deputies. So we put money into that. We also took care of corrections and probation. We also put money into paving. We get, the mayor didn't have any money in the paving. Also with all that, though, we also put money into a strike fund, $1 million for housing, which was not in the mayor's budget. And then the last thing that we did, we're going to be presenting this, we're lowering the millage rate. So people, their private tax will go down. It was not in the mayor's budget. So the things that we do, we think we need to do these things in order to make some rights. And again, and the mayor, he has every right to do the type of budget that he has done. But then once we get it, we decided to do that. So right now, that was one of the budgets that was presented. And then another commissioner presented the budget. Now, initially, she wanted to raise the millage. And I told her on the front, I said, that's a non-starter. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then she took it down, which is, I said, so we're not going to raise the millage. I said, we're trying to lower the millage. So, and initially, we thought the millage would stay at 12.45. But then after we found out we had some other monies, and some of those monies that we got, these are splash dollars, especially for the courthouse. In the courthouse, we had 4 elevators. Mm-hmm. None of them weren't working.
Yeah.
To me, that's a travesty and it's an embarrassment. You should not have a courthouse where people got to go to court. Some of these people may be older people, and we asked them to climb stairs in the elevator. To me, that was unacceptable. Right. So we took some money, make sure we get the elevators fixed, and to upgrade the elevator. And now we took some of those splash dollars. Those were dollars that had earned interest. So we took those interest dollars in order to take care of the courthouse. So again, we want to make sure we made some people whole, particularly the sheriff's department. They got 40 vacancies. And we need to make sure we want to help them. They should be starting the same pay as our police department. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So we want to make them whole. We want to make corrections whole. We want to make probation whole. And we also took care of the judges and the bailiffs. So people don't see all those. What people don't understand about our budget, the district attorney, the sheriff, the judges, all of them have to come to us for their budget.
Right.
So they present a budget. We look at the budget. So in essence, we try to make sure, try to give them what they want. And then at the same time, we need to make sure we take care of the employees that work for Athens-Clarke County government. We need to make sure that we get their wages up. And so we won't lose those folks to other industries. So we need to make sure that we take care of our employees.
Let me ask this. When you say the millage rate is going, what does that translate into dollars?
So in this particular, if we ever did the millage rate that one of my colleagues, it would have added $10 more to their to the millage, to your tax bill. Mm-hmm. With us lowering it, it's gonna save you $30. Now, people may say, well, that ain't a lot of money. Well, people that been in their houses for years on a fixed income, at $30 can make a difference. It really can. And it's not a big tax rate, but since I've been on the commission, we have lowered the millage at least twice.
And share this, because too many people don't know that they get their tax bill, their estimate, right, and they just go crazy.
Yeah.
But there's a process that they can come down and discuss.
They can discuss. Yeah.
They don't know that.
Yeah. So if you get your tax bill and whatever, you get that, you have two. And what people also don't understand, Charlie, is there's 2 tax bills on there. There's a property tax and then there's a school tax. We don't control the school system for their millage rate. Constitutionally, the Board of Education set their millage. The only millage we control is the millage for property taxes. For the school tax, the school takes care of that. Now, if you get your tax bill and you look at it, and you say, well, my house is priced way too high, you can go down to the tax office and appeal that and say, hey, I don't agree with that. And what they'll do, they'll take your appeal on the review, take a look at it. And some people have been successful in those. But what happens is we have what we call a tax digest, and what, depending on where you live at, is how people, when they look at pricing your house and everything, that's how these assessors, that's how tax digest is looked at for what your millage rate is going to look like and what your house is going to cost based on your neighbors and your surrounding area. So, for example, over the east side, you got all this new building over there, $400,000 and $500,000 houses. You got people that have been over there all their lives, like Charlie, 60 and 70 years. They was part of either born and raised out, they built the house. They might have paid $130,000, maybe less than $100,000 40, 50 years ago for their house. Because of what the housing markets look like, it inflates their millage rate on their house. So again, if you somebody, an older person been there, maybe or somebody whose husband might have died or a wife might have died, you got an income and your housing costs keep going up, your taxes keep going up, that can price you out.
And that's because of the other house.
Other houses are surrounding. So what we're trying to do is prevent some of that from happening by lowering our millage. And again, we'll vote tomorrow night on that.
I'm going to throw one in here.
Okay.
You know, several years ago, there was a study that was supposed to be done about freezing the tax rate for people at a certain age.
Okay.
I don't know what age that is and what it was then, but that was many years ago. That when you hit 70 or whatever it is, your whatever your tax rate is there, it just stays there.
Like
Right.
that.
So with the school system right now, because like I said, I'm 65, so my school system proper rate has frozen. It won't go up anymore. From what now we have not done that on our side of the podium right
Yeah.
now. So moving forward, that maybe is something that we can look at from a county perspective.
Talking to the mic.
Okay, from a county perspective, but we got to be mindful though. We do have to run a city, and our tax dollars are what help us run our city. So we just need to be mindful when we're looking at stuff like that. How's that going to impact our budget? So I'm always going to be cognizant of that.
Right.
And I think this study was supposed to have been done in 2006.
Okay.
And I've not heard anything from it since then.
If they did one, and they've done a lot of studies
Yeah.
in this community.
Different
If they've done one, I have not seen it.
Yeah, right. It's
But-
not been a topic.
Yeah, and that's been a hot topic. But
Sure.
but again, but I always want to be mindful, especially that people born and raised here, have been in the house for 40, 50 years. Then you got new development, you got gentrification. It's called what it is.
Right.
Going on in these African American communities. You talking about $400,000 and $500,000 houses being built. Of course, your property tax is gonna go up, and so I want to make sure that we protect those individuals.
Right. When you look at how the federal government is shaping right now,
Mhm.
how does that affect the budget process and how you guys are, collaborating with the federal government to keep the city going?
So right now we don't know, and that's unfortunate. We don't know, and we get a lot of money from our human and community development. We get a lot of money for our transportation. We get money for our solid waste. We get a lot of different grants. We don't know right now are those grants and those funds from the feds going to be available. I think everything is up in the air, Ron, and that's the unknown. So how that's going to impact and we keep asking questions. Don't nobody know right now. We got to figure out. But say we do lose those type of funding, then we got to look at, okay, so how are we going to balance our budget? And what things are we going to need to do as a community to make sure we got resources coming in for us to continue to operate and provide the services that our community demand and should expect those.
Right. Especially like safety. Charlie brought it up to me when we talked, the real-time crime lab.
Mm-hmm. We funded that.
Okay.
But it was, and again, I'm glad you mentioned that. It was not in the mayor's budget to fund that. We fund that fully. For the first time in a long time, our police department is fully funded with officers. You got 235 officers fully funded. So it makes sense. I'm not sure why the mayor did not fund it, but we found the money. That's going to be funded. I talked with the chief about it. I said, tell me what you need, how many positions you need. He told me. I told my colleagues, this is how many positions that we need to fund this thing. And we did. So we want to make sure that we did that, and public safety is real important. It's key in this community. Very much so.
Definitely. I actually want to go into culture, Athens culture a little bit. What do you, when you look at like the culture aspect of Athens, especially like Black culture, how do you see that going, or where do you see it heading?
Well, this is what I see. I see a lot of folks that really want to do some good things in this community. We got so many nonprofits that doing really good work. But I think what we got to do is figure out, and like Charlie said earlier, we need to learn how to be at the table early and understand what's happening, especially when it comes to your government. I had, about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I met with some faith-based leaders. And I talked with them. I said, what I need from you guys? Talk to your congregation about coming down to City Hall and listening to what's going on. Because, again, you don't get that print media. There's not a whole lot of information. Come now, show up when we have these commission meetings. Don't show up when something bad happens. Show up and understand this future land use thing we got going on. We need to understand how that's going to impact the Black community. When we talk about zoning, we talk about housing, and we need to talk about our infrastructure when it comes to sewer and water, what that impact is going to look like. Now, for the culture, we as a community, first of all, need to understand how government operates. A year ago, I sort of berated my colleagues because we're not well liked.
Right.
Especially from the folks on the east side. I met with those folks on the east side. They don't like us. And the reason they don't like us because there were some promises made to them 30 years ago that didn't happen.
Mm.
I said to my colleagues, we need to make sure, that's why I said earlier, that they have a seat at the table. In my administration, as the mayor, they'll have a seat at the table. I understand, okay, this is what we need to do. And then I need to ask them, tell me what you want to see in your community. See, I don't, sometimes people get, especially my white colleagues, I don't speak for all the black folks. That's why I asked the question. Tell me what you think you all need in your community and what best can we do to help you. You need to understand. But that culture, how the culture is going to shift, Ron, is us doing what we're supposed to do right by our community. And we don't do that, they're never going to trust us. 30 years ago, when they decided to do this unified government, the unified government had failed 4 times. 4 times. Because the African-American community never supported it. Because they thought they would lose their political base. So, but the 5th time, how they got them on was saying, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do economic development over here on the east side, and we're going to make sure people got sewer and water. Well, here we are 30 years later, and their promises were not fulfilled. So we failed. Now, I wasn't involved, I wasn't on the government, but now that I am, we failed. So we got to show good faith to that community. Say, hey, I want to work with you. I want to make sure I understand what your needs are, and let's see how we get there. Because, see, it ain't going to happen overnight, but you got to understand, if if we want these things to work, we got to work together to get there. And sometimes they feel like, what I've been told, their voices have not been heard. And I want to make sure that their voices are heard.
Right. Sure.
And that's true. The voices have not been heard. And the only time they get heard is when something go wrong. Well, most of the time, that's just too late. It has already happened. So we have to put ourselves at the table.
Right.
And every board in this town that deals with city and art, they are public. You can show up. They can't say you can't come.
Right.
And you can hear what's going on. You can know what's going on at the Classic Center, the Housing Authority, everybody. You can just see what's happening there. And you can show up and have input in it.
Right.
Now, I know some of the people are working, 2 jobs and supporting family, but everybody's not doing it. Everybody's not doing it. And even if you're doing it, back in my day, my parents were working like that, but they showed up for the school board meeting. They just put something else on that. And when things are important, people show up. But we've got to give them that to let them see they don't have to figure out it's important. Right. This is what this is going to be about. Not with all the, fluff and this is going to be committee number 9 that talks about item number 7. That's right.
There's a lot.
Just put it out there. This is what we're going to be discussing.
Yeah. And Ron, I love being an elected official, but I tell people it's a lot of work. It's serious business. And we need serious people doing this. Now, if I was working a full-time job, I would not be able to spend the time that I spend being a commissioner. And it's important, though, that my constituents know if they reach out to me, they're going to hear back from me. Because my thing is, within 48 hours, I'm either going to send you an email, text, or phone call. You're going to hear back from me in some form or fashion. So I think, to me, that's important that you reach out. Same way, some of my colleagues work a little bit different. Right. I hear from some folks, I call my commission, they don't call back. And I laugh. The running joke I got is at my church. A lot of my church members, they'll stop me about something that's going on. I said, well, I ain't your commissioner. He said, but you my church member. I said, I get that. I said, but what I can do is I'll reach out to your commissioner for you and say, hey, so-and-so stopped me, say, could you reach out to them? Matter of fact, it happened yesterday. So I'm going on and want her. So I said, look, I'll reach out to my colleague. I give him your number, and hopefully he will reach out to you.
Gotta fix that, y'all.
I know, but I have heard this, though, that some commissioners won't call their constituents back.
Well, again, some people don't even know who their commissioner is.
Right.
They don't know, but it's out there, and it doesn't take, a rocket science to find out who your commissioner is so that you can do that. And I found that, even back in the day when the commission, the council and the county commission, they did. But when they get a preponderance of people, knocking on that door or bringing that.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there. But if I just call out the blue and that's just one thing, but get other people to inquire about that too,
Right.
to bring it up on their radar.
And I think that's a good point. Our commission go how your constituents when they show up for if it's a hot button issue. If they show up, 9 times out of 10, depending on what that issue is, we're gonna vote in support of that. Or what we have heard from my constituents. And that's what I always tell people. I tell developers, I say, however my constituents go, that's how Dexter Fisher go. No developer, nobody's gonna control me based on something you want to do. And I may think it's a great project, but if my constituents think differently, those are folks who vote for me. And I think politicians sometimes forget that.
Yeah.
They think they know what's best.
Yeah, but we see you as...
Yeah, we don't know what's best. That's why it's important that we listen to the people that elect us and that we sort of try to follow their lead. That's why, for me, I'm always going to try to be a listening ear. And we may not always agree, and that's okay. That's why democracy works. That's what's great about this country and about this community. But at the same time, can we come to a common ground and say, hey, okay, let's look at it from this perspective and see can we make this work going in this direction.
And I found that when you give people information, when they get information, they can make decisions. They can make good decisions. But with that lack of information, they're going to just make up whatever the last person told them. Yeah. So that's what we need to work on. I've seen it 50 years in Athens. The more information you get, the better it comes out. The less information, the worse it comes out.
So, Mr. Fisher, in the conversation of the budget, I want to know, is there anything in there in regards to small business or nonprofit, funding?
Well, we fund in our general budget close to 10 nonprofits. That's in our general budget that we fund. Been funding for the last several years, and they are in there. So yeah.
Who are like some of the main ones?
We got Council on Aging, Project Safe, the Health Department, the library. Let me see who some other ones that we fund. Oh, the Neighborhood Leaders Program. So those programs get funded through us. And let me say something about our Neighborhood Leaders Program. They are my eyes and ears. Now, a lot of people in the community don't think they do enough, but they are my eyes and ears. They have helped me tremendously. When I need to know something, if I need to get word out in certain parts of my district, I can rely on my neighborhood leaders. When I have town hall meetings, they help me make sure I get people there. So they have been, for me, a bonus.
Right.
And let me say this. One of the things with that, too many people don't know who the neighborhood leaders are. And we've got to make that more aware. So they're just not talking to me or talking to different. They know where to go, to talk to this person, to let them move their agenda along. Yeah. So I think we've got to better identify who these people are and what their role is. I think it's a great idea to be able to get information back to the mayor and commission. But people in the community, again, lack of information, we need to know who these people are.
Yeah, because because they get criticized, they think it's sort of fluff. On the fluff of our nonprofit who we are funding. But for me, they've been very helpful. So I've been supportive of them. Now, on the flip side of that, as we move forward, and the question we got to ask my colleagues is, should they be a part of our general budget? Just like any other department, because technically they don't work for us. Yeah. We just fund them. So we got to figure that out. I think moving forward, we really do. But they have been for me, they've been very helpful. Okay. So yeah. So we're working on a minority business enterprise policy for Athens-Clarke County government. But we got to be mindful, because what's coming down from the feds now is you can't have anything in a policy that say women, minority, or anything. So we got to craft that to the point that we make sure that small businesses that want to do business with us get those opportunities. Right. So we're going to work on those things. After the budget's done, we're going to go on hiatus, the commission, for about a month. That month while we're out, I'm going to be working to try to get that policy crafted. I'll run it through our legal department, make sure it's good, and then we're going to try to put something on the table and get that passed with my colleagues. So right. I want to make sure we do millions and millions of dollars. We need to make sure that our small businesses, particularly small businesses of color, get to have an opportunity to do business with us.
Right, because I'm curious now, if there's no guidelines, like if we're not able to identify, like with women or minorities in specific policy, does that make it more exclusive, or for people who have maybe been, working with the government for a longer time? Like, how does that make it inclusive rather than exclusive?
So what we got to do again, I think we got our communication got to be A1. When contracts and stuff come up, we need to be able, because I want to know how many, especially small business of color, depending on what their expertise, how many of those do we have? And then we need to make sure, as what we can do as a government, say, hey, we got this contract coming down the pipe. I see you got this expertise. You need to go ahead and throw your name in the hat. So we got to be intentionally about what we're doing and making sure that we get that information out. And that's going to be the key. We got to make sure that we can reach those small business owners to make sure that, hey, this is the contract we got coming. We see that you got this expertise. You make sure that you throw your
hat in the ring.
Yeah.
And on that fact, because a lot of this money come from the Department of Community Affairs, we're working on that same thing. So it'll be advantageous to work closely, so it will mirror that. So you'll know that when it comes down from DCA, it is already mustered what they said, and it won't be into this backlash or nitpicking or what. That's what we're working on at DCA right now, because as you say, we're up in there. We have no idea, because all of that money comes from the feds, and it has a handprint on it right now, and we know what that handprint.
And they don't want you to put anything that they think going to be with diversity, inclusion, or equity.
Right.
None of that stuff can't be in there. So we got. That's why I told some of the community members that I'm working with, we need to make sure that what we put out there that can pass the mustard.
And I, I remember when that wasn't in there, and it still worked. Yeah. So that's all we have to go back to, because, before the 90s and 2000s, it was out there, but it was in there, but it was not so defined. Right. And that all we have to do is go back and look at that, and as you say, just point the individual to it and let them stand on their own, which they do anyway, without being identified as that. Yeah. Very, very seldom will that one little qualification that you got this will make you successful at this bid. That's a myth, that you got this because of minority or women or this. No, 90% of the people that administer these things administer them in a way that is fair and equitable, and that just has been a way of the now. But before now, it was done, and none of that was mentioned. So there's no real problem there.
Okay.
Well, we got, I think, on our part from a government, we need to be, again, intentional and aggressive to make sure that, hey, we got this coming down the pipe. So I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that those businesses be able to do business with us.
Right.
For sure.
Well, I want to kind of dive into the next topic. By the time y'all are seeing this, he would have already announced. But I want you to dive a little bit into what your campaign is going to, kind of the outlook of it, and what you're planning to do as mayor if elected.
So for me, again, I think, earlier you mentioned talk about culture. I think one thing we got to do is not change the culture, not only our community, but our government, how we do business. We want to be transparent about what we do. We want to be ethical about what we do. And we want this community to be a part of our government. For me, it's going to be about partnerships. How do we bridge the gap between people that don't care for the government, that don't like us? One of the things I'm going to talk about on the campaign trail is partnership. I'm going to be the only candidate who's got the phone number of the president of UGA right now. Can't nobody reach out to them. I can reach out to the president right now. Same thing with the chamber. Same thing with our business leaders in this community. I think it's important that you have those connections. To me, that's important. I think I'm going to really push workforce development when it comes to jobs. We're going to push economic development when it comes to, getting industries here in this community. Then I'm always going, and I love young people. I think we got to make sure that we give our young people an opportunity for a hand up.
Because gang violence has been something that you've paid attention to for
I did,
a while.
And you know what? And one thing that we have done that we've been successful, we gave, when I got on the commission, we had $7 million sitting in the youth development that hadn't been used with the $7 million that we had already received. We're just sitting there. I'm sitting there thinking, why is this money sitting there? Why are we not using it? So we got together with the Boys and Girls Club. We gave them $3.8 million to work specifically on gang initiative, gang violence, Then they work with other nonprofits within our community, and we open up 4 community centers within the housing authority that are open now. So, those kids can stay there, and the programming can be there for them. So we've done that. We work with these nonprofits. So what you have seen, we talked about it now. We haven't seen the data yet, but we talked about it. We have not seen a lot of uptick. It's early in the summer of young people getting in trouble right now. We got the youth force up there at the mall right now that's doing 17 to 24-year-olds, working with those young men and women to get them ready for the job market. So to me, I'm going to continue to stay on that path to make sure that our young people have opportunities, to make sure that we want them to stay. If they educated here and don't go out to college, or if they go out to college and come back, we should welcome them with open arms. We got to deal with our housing situation, but we got to have a plan. If we got 10, 15 billion sitting in a housing pot, that should be enough efficient funds to do the type of housing that we need to have done. But again, we got to be strategic about it. We need to make sure that we do it the right way. Right. And I mentioned earlier, with this future land use, it's critical. People just you can't sit and think what Athens is going to look like in the next 15 to 20 years. And we got to have an infrastructure. Now, nobody wants to talk about infrastructure because it ain't sexy. But if we don't have sewer and water, it can be devastating to the community. So we got to make sure that those things are in place. So those are some of the things, Ron, that I will be writing on. And I just think I'm the best candidate. In fact, I know I'm the best candidate to help get this community going in the right direction that I think it needs to go. Not that it hadn't been, but I think the way that I would govern, again, everybody would feel like they're a part of this government. Everybody will know that if I'm your mayor, I'm going to be there to support you to make sure that we have a city that we all can be proud of, in a city that everybody feel like they're a part of. And it don't need to be any divisiveness going on in our city. People need to understand that we're here to serve you. Not us, not you serving us, we're here to serve you. So that's going to be sort of my campaign pitch. And people are going to try to paint me something different, which is okay. But, till you walk into my shoes, you never know what I've been through. I haven't shared a whole lot about that, my personal life. Y'all talk about me growing up. And don't get me wrong.
We'll have you back.
Had a great childhood. But then, I understand what it's like as you move up. I spent 32 years at UJ, but as I moved up, I had to understand that everything that I had to do, I had to make sure it was A1. Because sometimes I'm the only one that look like me sit at the table.
Right.
But it helped me develop those partnerships. And it helped me. People are going to think different from me. That's okay. You got different views, but hey, can we come to a common ground and get things done? And that has always been what my career has been about, especially with my staff. I always make sure our employees, I always told our supervisors, we always going to make sure that the people that work for us, that they're respected, and that we do everything we can to go out with to make sure that when they come to work at UJ, they enjoy coming here, because we don't know what's going on when they get home or what they're dealing with, but we need to make sure they feel good about being here for 8 hours.
Right.
And I always made that a point with my supervisor. And nobody was going to ever be disrespected. Any supervisor disrespect, they lose their job. That was, for me, it was a non-starter, and we were not going to disrespect our staff. Right. I want to make sure. It's the same thing at school system. It was a different vibe for me. I went from I went to higher ed to K through 12. I never had to deal with parents. But when I got to Clarke County School District, I did, because if a kid missed a bus or something happened, and the parents sometimes would call me and I was called direct transportation. So I had to find, why did that child miss that bus, or why did we not pick that child up?
Right.
So again, but I want to make sure that people are a part of this government. And that's what we do, and that's what I'm going to run on. Okay.
Is there any last things that you would like to leave for the audience? I appreciate your time and you coming by.
Thank you. For me, I'm all, I always keep it real. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I think you ever heard me behind that podium and at the rail. Now, I tell folks like it is, I want people to understand that I'm always going to try to fight for my community, regardless. Although I may stay in a different district in this one, but if you call me or want me, and I have collaborated with some of my colleagues in their respective districts, talk to some of their constituents, I don't mind doing that. So I'm about collaboration, about working with people from all backgrounds, because Athens to me is a melting pot. Yeah. You got a major research one university, You got a great city. We got entertainment. You can do so much. You talk about the studio. We talking about filming movies here. We're on the crust of doing something great.
Yeah.
But we're gonna take partnerships all the ways to get those things done.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Mr. Maddox, is there anything you'd like to?
Well, Dexter kind of said it right there when he said, getting information to the people, and that's what they need. And it goes back to my new motto: it is what it is.
Right.
Just let them know, and then once you do that, there's nothing else you can do. But people that know, that have information, will make informed decisions. That's been proven time and time again. I don't care who you are, what you are. You can be a young person or not so young person. But and I've said it with you when you first came here about the magazine, Athens, the greatest thing that we're suffering from is a lack of information. A lack of information. And when we can get someone to lead us and lead that informational outpour, that everybody hears the same thing, that you don't tell one group one thing, then you get over and you tell another group something else, and then that brings conflict. But when from the head to the bottom, this is the message. As he said about his employees and his staff members, you hold them accountable. You hold them accountable when they don't do what they ought to do.
Keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. Thank you for your service, Mr. Commissioner.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all for tuning in to The Highlight. I hope to hear from you soon, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.